All right. Hello, everyone. I am Joe Galatly here again today with Craig Taylor. And Craig, thank you for joining us. First off, will you give us just a little background on your current project, your current role, just to set the context before we jump into this conversation?
Sure, Joe. Great. Thanks for having me on Medcurity, and I'm happy to be here. My role right now is CEO of CyberHoot, my company I co-founded with three other people, gosh, 12 years ago now. And our mission is to educate a billion people. Yeah, I said a B for billion on cyber literacy skills or cyber hygiene, you can call it as well. Because really, there's not a lot of that being going on in our school systems. It's not taught in our businesses. And cybercrime is just an enormous drain on the economy, on businesses. I was on a breach call today for, gosh, a couple hours. Well, a company has been down for 3 days doing no work because they got hit with ransomware. It's happening all the time. So that's me. That's what I'm all about with CyberHoot. I'm the CEO there, and we've been doing this for 12 years, and we're full steam ahead.
Well, Craig, we get to see in our world these the downside, the after effects of a security incident. So we become the most paranoid people in the room, right? When you're talking about
Yeah.
risk management and what can go wrong. I actually will start with a quick question building on that. For organizations that haven't felt that pain yet, what are effective ways to bring the conversation up to start thinking really seriously about cybersecurity? How do you build awareness, even in leadership and the executive support of a program before they've been through the warfare that is a security incident?
Um, in a single sentence, just do it. It's high time. If you talk to, a dozen CEOs, half of them are aware of it and doing it. The other half are worried about it. Companies are really just sitting fish in a barrel for hackers these days because of the advance of AI and phishing attacks that are no longer um, poor grammar, English as a second language. It's all very sophisticated stuff. And when they're successful, the impact is much, much worse, right? There's years and years ago, there was single extortion. They would encrypt your files, you'd pay a ransom, you get them back, or you'd restore from backup. Then they moved to double encryption because backups were getting better and people could restore their files. So they exfiltrated the data and they threatened to release it online, and they still do that to this day. And then they moved to triple extortion, which is reporting you to the authorities where you would get fines. HIPAA, High Tech Act says you got to report, more than 500 record breaches. And if any healthcare provider listening to this has a breach and they can't prove they didn't have less than 500 records at risk, they've got to report it. There's even a website where you can see the names of companies, healthcare providers. It's called the HIPAA Wall of Shame. So you just don't want to be on that wall ever. There's even a fourth extortion way where, sometimes when the hackers are in your network trolling around, they get the home phone numbers and the cell phones of your employees, and they call them and they threaten their physical safety if you don't pay the ransom. So there's four different ways that I'm aware of extortion happening these days, and it's really a wild west out there. So what do you do about it? You got to educate your staff. The weakest link by most accounts, most of the articles you read from different sources, whether it's the Verizon data breach report or multiple cybersecurity experts say the human in the chair is the weakest link in almost every case. And so you have to do something to educate them. The good news, though, Joe, is that this isn't rocket science. It's pretty straightforward, common sense stuff. But the common sense part has to be combined with a little bit of knowledge. Like, what is a typo squatted domain name? Why do I have to check the sender of an email so carefully? Well, that's the only way hackers can get bad emails into us is to fake that in most cases. 95 out of 100 is going to be a fake email message from a fake domain. So all of those reasons give you really good reason to get involved and have that conversation around training your staff, doing positive reinforcement phishing simulations, which I'm sure we'll get into later, Joe. There are good ways and bad ways to do what we're talking about. And hopefully we get to talk about that today.
When I looked at your background, it looked like you came to cybersecurity through psychology, through education psychology. Uh, we're just going to step back a moment from that, from all the current tactics, and say, okay, so overall, is human nature part of looking at cybersecurity? How does human nature impact how we build or construct a cybersecurity posture?
Well, that's probably the most important question to ask today, Joe. How do we get people to participate? There's a lot of apathy. There's a lot of people that are upset about their company's cybersecurity program. You can just troll through many Reddit threads and see people are livid with the latest fake email message just before Christmas that promised, your quarterly bonus, and it was a phishing test. There are so many ways to get things wrong. For 20 years plus, cybersecurity is focused on bigger sticks to prevent the clicks. And that's a broken method. It doesn't work. Basic cybersecurity, basic psychology would tell you you need to reward good behaviors for those behaviors to be repeated. 75 years ago, B.F. Skinner, the father of modern operant conditioning, which is a psychology study, said that rewarded behaviors are repeated, and no psychology study has ever said punished behaviors are extinguished, right? So we're in this mode of punishing employees for clicking on links, and it doesn't work. It doesn't change their behaviors. What it does do is it alienates them. It gets them to give up or to quit or to stop engaging. And so they stop learning. And then they make a mistake and they make another mistake. And some companies are as forceful as firing those people, but that's a culture that is just on the decline and is no one wants to work there, right? So if you can turn it around and reward the good behaviors through gamification and a variety of positive reinforcement approaches, you get better engagement. People actually want to participate. They learn that little bit of knowledge they need. They apply common sense, and they become more efficient at doing their email. They become more confident, more secure, and the incidents go way, way down. And the culture goes way up on if you see something, say something. And it's much more collaborative. So yeah, there's psychology underpins everything you want to accomplish in a good cybersecurity program.
So upstream of even the event occurring or the incident being triggered by a phishing attack, however that happens, before that, why do smart people fall for phishing attacks, even if they know better? How is this an issue that we even need to? What we're going to get into how to address it, but why is it an issue in cybersecurity that humans still fall for or are this vulnerable attack vector for these organizations?
Well, you see, hackers only have to be right once, and humans have to be like the employees at every firm have to be right 100% of the time in order to avoid a phishing email click that leads to a breach. Now, there are technical controls you can put in place. You can remove administrative rights from your Windows workstation users, things of that nature. You can put in really advanced EDR, endpoint detection and response. And most hospitals, most healthcare providers have a lot of that in place already. A lot of their data doesn't even live on the local computer or the local network anymore. It's all in the cloud in the Epic systems of the world. So, we've removed that threat from hospitals largely because, you can break into this computer, but all the data is out in the cloud and it's well protected there. It's encrypted and you can't get to it. So that's no good. But at the end of the day, if you have to rebuild a bunch of computers on a local area network because been hit with ransomware, you're going to be down and you're going to send patients home and optional surgery is going to grind to a halt. Those are all bad things. And it's very avoidable, right? So what leads to it, though, is that hackers know people are more likely to click on things if you rush them and create urgency, artificial urgency, or some emotional tie-in. So every time there's a disaster somewhere, there's a flood of emails that come out, donate to this relief fund, or, here's some images from the nasty event. Right? People are watching the car crash kind of situation, but they're tainted with malware. They're tainted with links to bad websites. And so that gets people to click because there's this morbid fascination with things. They use all the different psychological cues to get you to click before you think, right? And that's human nature, right? We all know this. If we're driving in traffic, someone cuts us off and we react to it, are we going to react in a really positive way? Or if we pause for a moment and we think about it, gosh, maybe that person's on the way to the hospital. Maybe they're delivering a baby. Maybe there's something else going on and they need to get there quick. Let's just get out of their way and let them go. Right? That's the thoughtful approach, which it just takes a momentary pause. That's the same with email. Email comes into us 1,000 times a day and we have to get through it. And so we're, churning through it as fast as we can. And if we click on things without pausing, that's when those mistakes happen. So there's a lot of reasons, but it boils down to human nature paired with having to be perfect and never click on a bad link versus hackers sending millions of these out and only needing one person to click on that link.
So, talk a little bit more about what we're maybe doing wrong today. You said there's a bit of a fear-based approach, or maybe it is
Yes.
the approach right now, right? So are there specific behaviors that we do tend to obsess about or focus on from a cybersecurity standpoint that are in the wrong place and then take us to where we should
Yeah.
be, how we should be looking at this?
I'll give you an analogy from education. I want you, if you're listening to this, or you, Joe, to tell me about your favorite teacher in whatever class or whatever instruction. It could have even been a coach, hockey coach, or I'm a big hockey player, was born and raised in Canada. But what was your favorite memory about the education you had on the ice or in a classroom? And then ask yourself this question. Did that instructor, did that teacher punish you for not knowing things? Not even once, I'll bet. It was always encouragement. It was always engagement. It was always like, hey, Joe, you really almost got that right. Here's what you got right. Here's what you need to think about. And here's how we're going to make that, get you the full understanding of whatever this concept is. It was very positive, very empowering, very reward driven, but small rewards, right? And that works for creating engagement because in students, what you need for them to learn things and to change their behaviors and to become knowledgeable about a subject is for them to grasp onto it, to engage and to pay attention and to believe they can learn it. Right now,
What does punishment look like? As you take us into that the positive side of it, completely makes sense. I'm excited to hear more
yep.
about it. In the current workforce, I mean, when you say punishment, how does that
How does
actually
that get play
present?
out?
Yeah.
So almost every cybersecurity program over the last 20 years has said we got to test people with fake messages to their inboxes. We got to send them more and more devious emails because that's what hackers do. And we got to teach them to pay attention and not click on things. And when they do make mistakes, we got to call them out in front of everyone and hold them accountable. If they click 3 times in 3 different messages over the course of a year, they're fired. There's, cybersecurity policies about that at a lot of the big banks of the world because it's just not possible to survive those kinds of things. So they make the consequences extremely over the top. But what happens is individuals that, and I've talked to many, many, many hundreds of people who have been part of these programs where those fake messages come in. No one has ever really taught people how to spot and avoid phishing attacks. It's been a there's an old analogy that works so perfectly for this, Joe. Feed a person a fish, feed him for today, but teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Now, take the F and make it a PH. That's what we're talking about with phishing. So if you feed someone with a fake email message today, maybe they'll pay attention and they won't click on anything else for the rest of the day, but they don't really understand it. Their level of knowledge in this space is just don't click on anything. That's where it ends, right? Don't click on anything. But I got to get my job done. So sometimes I got to click, but I'm not sure how to know when it's okay to click or not. But we punish and punish and punish, and we call people out, and we have the HR and the management meetings with the individuals who fail. And without the proper training, it's just a lose-lose scenario for everybody. The employee loses, the company loses, people click, they don't really understand. And really effective phishing that comes in convinces people to click, right? The best things that I've ever heard of are like dress code changes and benefit changes and holiday schedules. Click here to get it. And then boom, you're on the malicious website, an unpatched system or a 0 day, and you've got yourself a really bad problem. So this is the shame and punishment approach, and it doesn't work. Like we know from psychology, imagine a slot machine, most powerful behavior modification tool ever designed by human beings. Pull a lever, you might get a reward. Pull a lever, you might get a reward. You keep pulling until you get that reward, and it's an endorphin rush, right? So then it's reinforcing, continuing to put those nickels and quarters into the slot machine, whatever it is. That's the principle behind positive reinforcement. Now, if it's a one-to-one, right? I trained a rat in my psychology degree program to press a bar, get a pellet, right? A food pellet. So they press the bar, they get a food pellet, and they can connect the dots. And they just, when they're hungry, they press the bar. Now, if you do it on a fixed schedule, like press the bar 5 times, you get a pellet, the rat will do it 5 times. No different than the slot machine. But if you randomize the reward, so you can press that bar up to 10 times, you'll get one pellet, but you never know when. That really reinforces the behavior. They'll just press it when they're not even hungry because they want to collect some pellets for when they get hungry. That's the slot machine approach, but it's positive reinforcement with an intermittent reward schedule. So if you can build a cybersecurity program, translate this to cybersecurity that rewards in little tiny ways, like a little pellet of food, but more like a free lunch for the top performer or a random drawing for the people who are 100% compliant on their assignments, a gamification of it where you can create avatars that grow over time with the ferocity of cyber literacy growth in the individual. A leaderboard. This is one of the most amazing things recently. We introduced a leaderboard and we suddenly found the C-suite, the senior leaders of companies were getting their training done where before the leaderboard they weren't because they were anonymously dead last in the company for doing their assignments, but it was anonymous. No one knew, so they weren't held accountable. The moment they saw I'm like 29th out of 30 people, the competitive nature of that leaders don't get to be leaders without being competitive and really wanting to succeed at stuff. They suddenly got busy and got all their training done. It's amazing. But it's a positive reward for climbing that leaderboard for those individuals. So that's what I mean when I'm saying you got to reward engagement because it's not hard to learn these skills. You just have to pay attention to the little bits of knowledge we put into these assignments and then mix it with some common sense and then muscle memory it with practice over time.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a phenomenal way to describe it too, and I can see the contrast between standard approaches and what you're describing. Take a moment. We'll get into a little more on the cybersecurity landscape and how AI is impacting this. But I'd love to hear just a bit of CyberHoot specifically. How have you taken that, productized it? How do you meet those needs with your customer base? And I'm just inviting you to pitch for a moment here because I think you've outlined the why really nicely. If there are some general things people should take away, but then also just how your solution speaks to that too would be great.
Yeah, everything I've said applies to any cyber program you build. If you get away from embarrassing people and instead get towards recognizing high performers or people who have reported an accurate phishing simulation that either was from your own IT team or from your vendor of choice, reward those things. Create a culture of positive reward and recognition that people come to realize, hey, this is what the company focuses on. They want us to understand these things and participate. That's universal. If you want to talk about what CyberHoot's done, every single thing we've done in our platform has been to create tiny little rewards for engagement, for participation, for high scoring. We have avatars that we assign to individuals, and they begin with this little baby hatchling. It's an owl. You notice our logo above my head. And over time, as you complete assignments, your owl becomes more and more mature and ferocious looking. It gains armor at some point. It gains a shield and a sword, or not a sword, I think it's a staff. That's one avenue of it. It's the gamification of it. And then there's a leaderboard aspect to it. There's also certificates of completion. When you finish an assignment from CyberHoot, you get a certificate, you can download it, and that may not appeal to everybody, but what does is the 15 minutes of continuing education credits we give you for doing that. Not every profession will recognize cybersecurity training, but more and more are. So over the course of a year, you can get 6 hours towards your 10, 20-hour requirement within your field of study. And by the way, everything we teach you translates to personal growth for you personally in your personal email, your personal cybersecurity, your knowledge of financial threats that you face when you're selling things on Marketplace. We cover all these different topics in our once a month video that's 2 to 3 minutes, and our once a month phishing simulation, which is Hootfish. We call it Hootfish, and it is not based at all on trickery. No one clicks a link and fails a test in Hootfish. They do their assignment by visiting the CyberHoot website and walking through first with a wizard at the easy level, but they graduate to moderate and hard, and the wizard goes away. They walk through the sender. Is this safe or suspicious? And we give you an open book explanation of typo squatted domain names and letter switching and how hackers hack us for real. Then we move on to the subject and the greeting and the language quality. And then the urgency and emotionality. Is it in this, is there that found in this line? Meaning they want you to react to this email. So something's not quite right. Links to external websites, attachments. We got through the whole rubric of 6 or 7 components of an email, and we teach you and we practice over and over muscle memory on these 30-second intervals once a month for 12 months. And my God, people get it. They understand it. They say, for the first time, I know how to fish instead of just being fed a fish, right? And the IT teams and the senior engineers, they tell us, I have my nights. I got an email the other day said, I got my nights and weekends back. I love this product. I'm no longer fighting, fires on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. And we get a metric for every single human in your organization doing that phishing simulation. There's a little known, risk to the traditional shame and fear approach because we send those emails out. It's called attack fish. We measure who opens the email and we measure who clicks on the email. But guess what? Only about 40 to 50% actually open the email. There's so much email out there that much of it gets ignored. And you get no measurement for those employees who didn't open the email. Who's the biggest offenders? The senior leaders of your company who don't read email anymore. If you need them, you Slack them or you Teams, chat with them. So our system has got much higher engagement levels. It's got much higher metric levels. It's got much more realism because, oh, by the way, you can typo squat a domain name in our simulation that takes Microsoft and changes it to an R and an N and Microsoft.com. You cannot do that in the traditional fear and shame method of emails to the inboxes because one report and Microsoft will sue you to stop impersonating them. So we've solved all these different problems. People actually rate our videos 90% of the time. They give us a thumbs up. Our Hootfish, we get 75% of the time. That might be a little stretch. Sometimes it's 65. We've had as high as 80 on average weekly ratings. It depends on who's rating us, but it's a lot higher than the 0% who like to be tricked.
Well said. I appreciate the overview. Makes a lot of sense. You one point in there that you made about midway in the description is even a callback to the end user, the employee's personal security. And one of the recent episodes that we did was with Robert Siciliano, and his main thesis was that people need to care about security in their personal life to really bring in that sense of importance to your job. And so cybersecurity reaches outside into their personal life, and some of that awareness that we can bring to them actually benefits them personally too, it sounds like. And it's a reward in and of itself to help protect the individual beyond just the workforce and the work environment, right? So that was a good point that you made in there.
I'd love to just add one point. 100% true. I don't know one person, actually, I know one person who refuses to use computers, but they're like 88 years old. But I don't know anybody that doesn't have to use a computer personally and professionally in their daily lives today. So if you really want to learn this stuff, it's not hard, but you need to put in a little bit of effort. Now, we give it away free to individuals at cyberhoot.com/individuals. You can register for a free lifetime account and get that monthly training and the overviews. And what we're doing is we're building 12 new videos a year to cover emerging threats, things that have changed since last year or 2 years ago or 10 years ago. Now, phishing has remained the constant over the last 20 years. It's still the number one way companies are breached, individuals are breached. But there are other tricks to the trade that are happening, right? There's financial scams now. There's AI deep fakes that you need a safe word with your families and with your business so that financial transactions don't occur between two people who don't know the safe word. Because hackers will pretend to be the CEO demanding a wire transfer. And if it's on a phone call, it could sound like the CEO. You mentioned that we're going to get into AI. Happy to talk about that. But there are emerging threats. So we have a video this year in our platform that you can get for free, cyberhoot.com/individuals, and you can watch how and what you need to do to accommodate this emerging threat of deep fakes.
Let's get into it. So, even beyond, I mean, you just teed it up nicely. We're seeing the deep fakes become just incredibly realistic, and we're seeing progress in this every week. You could have been unimpressed 3 months ago, and you might be really impressed today, right? How is the advances in AI and large language model technologies? How is that changing social engineering? How's it changing the attack vector? And then I'm very interested if you think it's helping the defense as much as the offense on this, or
Yeah.
we're still figuring it out.
So there's really three ways to think about AI today. There's the offensive threat that it represents. There's the defensive benefits that you can bring to bear into your business. And there's the productivity enhancements that everybody's clamoring for, right? Because it's a force multiplier. You can do more with one person using AI than you could previously do three people without it. It's really a force multiplier. So let's talk about offensively what's happening. Hackers have, Fraud GPT, and there's another one called, I forget its name, but they've taken AI models and they've built fraud engines around them, and they can point it at any social media profile and create 10 very worthy links in very perfectly designed emails to appeal to their target person. It used to be they created one phishing campaign, sent it to a million people, hope for 1.1% click rates, one in 1,000, one in 10,000. Now they're sending 10 campaigns to the individual they're targeting to see if they can get them to click based on their subject, their public persona. And they're very, very appealing, right? If you knew what my favorite things in life were and you sent me 10 emails on those favorite things, I might be tempted to click on them, right? And so would anyone listening to this. So they're getting very much more specific. But that's not where the offense ends. It used to be you had to be a pretty damn decent hacker to be able to create these things and send these things. Now anyone can go to an AI model and create very believable phishing emails with just a simple instruction set. And they don't even have to know how to do prompting. They can go find it online in any kind of form. Here's how you write a phishing email summary, right? And good people are teaching bad people how to do those things. So there's more people getting into it and able to do it because AI is doing the hard work. The damage that is done once a successful breach occurs has gone through the roof, right? It used to be they could encrypt your files and you could restore from backup and there was no need to pay the ransom. Now they don't just encrypt the files, they do that, they delete your backups, they exfiltrate the data, and they hold you hostage in the following way. They say, okay, if you want your data back, you can't get it off your backups because we deleted those. If you refuse still, we'll release the data to the public, sharing, your law firm files to the public of all these salacious legal briefs that you've had to do over the last 20 or 30 years. And note to anyone in healthcare slash law slash accounting, you don't need 25 years of files. If you get breached, you have to go call and email and contact 25 years. Take the last 15 years, like maybe the last 5 years online, and take the other 20 years and put them on worm drives. Write once, read many. And so that you can have access when you need it, but it's never accessible by anybody else. It's offline. All right, that's a side note. AI is making the results more damaging and the extortion more prevalent. So they'll release the files to the internet. They'll even threaten to report you to the authorities for fines and regulatory punishments. HIPAA and healthcare. This is a healthcare podcast. More than 500 files, patient records are breached. You have a responsibility under HIPAA and the High Tech Act to report that to the authorities, to put your name out there. And there's a wall of shame, I guess. Again, this is going back to that cybersecurity thing, shaming and punishing people. Not going to change a lot of behaviors, but rewarding the good ones. Like if you had a top 10 healthcare companies that protect your data, wall and publish that, people would purposefully go to those firms and those hospitals because they did a better job and they haven't had a breach of my personal financial or medical records. That would be a good way to do it. But that doesn't exist today. Maybe we should start that, Joe.
I like it. Start a reward system, start a way to acknowledge those that are investing proactively and protecting patients. And I do think the problem is so widespread that it used to be where it was only the people in your and my roles or the salespeople that had to try to explain the fear and the uncertainty and doubt. I think that now that's out there. I think that's being talked about on golf courses and at conferences. And I think the overall awareness is certainly lifted up to where there's more support for sure. I think one of the things that might confuse the issue is there's maybe a tendency to equate compliance with being secure. And
Yes.
so any thoughts you have on that? I think compliance you could say, hey, we're 100%, training has been completed 100%. Do you think compliance masks or gives a false sense of security sometimes, or is there another way to look at
100%.
that?
You're absolutely right. I'm gonna give you another healthcare analogy because I love this is the best healthcare analogy I've got. HIPAA and High Tech Act says you must train your employees on patient records, non-public personal information, and that is properly protected and limited to a need to know basis, right? So if you have a nurse and they're not assigned to this patient and it's a famous patient and the nurse goes and looks at that file, like happened with Michael Jordan one time 10 years ago, that nurse was fired because she wasn't assigned to that patient. Those kinds of things people know about and that exist today. But let's imagine you decide as a hospital to be compliant and to have your high compliance. You're going to do that training once a year. January 15th, we all get together for 4 hours and we go through the cybersecurity protections that we need at our company. And you're done for the year. Does that work? Yes, you're compliant. Does it actually change behaviors? Well, let me put it into perspective for you. A lot of people go to the gym on January 15th and do a 3 hour workout, hurt themselves, and refuse to go back to the gym for the rest of the year. Did they get in shape? Are they physically fit now because they did their once a year workout? At worst, at best, they hurt themselves and they're going to maybe go back in a month or a few weeks. At worst, they maybe pulled a muscle, they had to go to physical therapy and whatever. You can't create a culture of cyber knowledge, cyber hygiene, and cyber literacy in a company, in a healthcare provider with once a year training. Just won't happen. No different than physical fitness. So you need what we call HIIT in physical fitness is high intensity interval training. It doesn't even have to be an hour 3 times a week. It can be 30 seconds three times a week, right? Or a 3 minute workout where you really get your heart pumping, and then it done with supervision and appropriate, trainers and knowledge of what you should and shouldn't be doing and mitigating that. You can be done really quickly without a lot of time intervention. We do that within CyberHoot. We have a 2 to 3 minute video once a month. And once you understand phishing and we've taught you how to fish, like how you tie a fly and how you fish for this. And once you know how to do it and you've practiced it a bunch, it takes 30 seconds for you to do the hoot fish exercise. It takes a lot longer in the first one, yes, but after you practice and you learn the rubric, 30 seconds. So you count up, that's what, less than 5 minutes a month per employee. It doesn't take much time, but it creates muscle memory. So when they're going through their email and processing through 100 messages a day that doctors get, and they look at this one thing that's very specific about their Lake Tahoe skiing adventure, and here's the images from that file, but it didn't come from the guy who was on the trip with me. I'm not sure what's going on here. They pause, they look at the sender and like, oh my God, this doesn't look legit. And they delete it and move on.
Absolutely love the fitness analogy. That was great. That is very appropriate. And I'm certainly much rather run on a treadmill for, a few minutes intensely once or twice a week than go to a marathon. That resonates with me a lot. So,
Yeah,
but
me
yeah,
too.
it's such a great point, great analogy. I think as we get toward the close here, maybe some hot tips on other things than email awareness. Where else are there your humans an attack vector or a weakness in the organization from a cybersecurity perspective? Obviously, email's been the biggest one
It's the biggest
statistically.
one. Yep.
anything else that we should be looking at when you put together a training program, when you say, how do we protect our organization? Anything we're missing, just focusing on email here?
Yeah. So I get asked if you could do one thing, what would it be? If you could do two, if you could do three. So the one thing is actually not the awareness training, it's multi-factor. If you could only do one thing today, turn on MFA, multi-factor authentication. It's that second step when you go to log into a bank or an email account or anything critical, your retirement account, anything that has value within it that's targeted by hackers, put that MFA on. It's your fail safe because I know the second thing is adopt a password manager. If you're not using a password manager here today, you are reusing passwords everywhere you go, and you have a predictable way of constructing your passwords. When you have to change it, you just add this little bit at the end. But guess what? Hackers can see all of that when they breach a website and it's an unencrypted password file. So now they can try that everywhere else you've been and they break into you. So password hygiene is the second way hackers get in through a lack of MFA, multi-factor authentication. So that text message to put into your login credentials with your username and your password in the text message, or the authenticator app, or better yet, the best gold standard that's really just growing like hotcakes is passkeys. If you have the option of adopting a passkey, you should. Windows Hello, Windows 11, and the Hello protocol can take that in and hold it for you. So when you go to that one website, you can use a passkey. That's the equivalent of a username, password, and MFA in a single step. And it can't be stolen. It only works between your computer and that website. So if it's broken into and they steal that passkey, it doesn't work anywhere else, unlike your password. So adopt a password manager. The third thing is the learning and management systems that we produced at CyberHoot is the third thing I would suggest everybody does. Make sure you adopt one, but don't just do the negative fear and uncertainty ones, the shame and the punishment. Adopt one and build a program that is positive and rewarding for the engagement. And then publicly call out high performers. Don't shame the ones that make mistakes.
I love this. I think our uh, listeners are going to resonate with the idea of maybe getting clinician buy-in by putting them on a leaderboard. I think that's pretty appealing right there. It might help with some of those hesitant, always too busy providers that we really need to have just the same level of awareness. So for so many reasons, I like your points here, and great closing advice. Well, we've shared a lot of helpful insights, I think, that you've brought here, Craig. Also, just some of the scary stories of what the attacks look like. I don't want to end on a fear note in light of everything we've talked about. So tell us just positively how to reach you and stay in touch with CyberHoot, and how to contact you if they'd like to.
Sure. You can book a 30-minute meeting for a demo with us for a free 30-day trial at cyberhoot.com. Just book a demo. It's right there on the homepage. If you want to email us, sales@cyberhoot.com, and we'll get right back to you and schedule some time. We do have a coupon code for anybody listening to this, Medcurity. If you put that as the coupon, you'll get 20% off your first year of services for your business if you sign up from listening to this podcast. It's our way of saying thank you to Joe for the exposure and for bringing this important topic to all of you. Hopefully, we can avoid not just one breach, but many breaches of the healthcare providers out there and save you from, I was on a call today for 2 hours, and it's the third day in a row from a client who had a breach, a ransomware event. They got this, what's it called, Invector or something. And there's nobody doing anything at that company for the last 3 days. It's very painful. So let's help you avoid that with a little bit of efficiency training that happens to cover cybersecurity. And we'll do that together.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. We see the negative the negative consequences or outcomes often, and everything you've shared today is just I think, a fresh way. Sounds like you've been doing this for a while, but I appreciate you bringing this. I think it's a fresh way for a lot of people to think about education. So I really appreciate your time, Craig, and thanks for the work you're doing and your time on the podcast today.
My pleasure, Joe. Thank you for having me.